It's 3:14 a.m. in a cramped apartment in São Paulo. The only light in the room comes from 3 monitors flickering with the cold blue glow of terminal windows and telegram groups that move faster than a heart rate monitor during a cardiac arrest. My eyes feel like they've been rubbed with sandpaper, and my 3rd cup of extra strong bottom shelf coffee is the only thing keeping my soul attached to my body. Welcome to the graveyard shift of a 7. That's Brazilian slang for a fraudster, based on Article 171 of the Penal Code. If you think this is about some high-tech Ocean's 11 heist, you've been watching too many movies. This is a war of attrition. It's a boring, high-stakes grind where one wrong click means the federal police are kicking down your door before sunrise. Most people think credit card cloning is just about swiping a card through a little plastic device at a gas station. That's old school. That's for the guys who still use flip phones. In Brazil, we're dealing with some of the most sophisticated banking security on the planet. Our banks are paranoid, and for good reason. So my routine, it starts with the panel. A panel is a custom-built web interface where all the data from phishing sites, what we call Landeras, comes to die. I'm looking at a live feed of infos, name, CPF, card number, CVV, and the holy grail, the banking password. Every time a new line pops up in green, it means some poor soul just tried to update their data on a fake bank email I sent out 4 hours ago. I don't feel bad for them. In this business, empathy is a luxury that gets you a 10-year sentence. I grab an info, check the BIN, that's the first 6 digits that tell me if it's a high-limit platinum card or a pathetic universitario card with a $50 limit, and then the real work begins. I'm not just sitting here. I'm managing a fleet of laranyas, or mules. These are the people who provide the bank accounts where the stolen money eventually lands. I have to make sure the laranya is awake, that their app is working, and that they're ready to withdraw the cash the second the Pix transfer hits. Pix is Brazil's instant payment system. It's beautiful, it's fast, and for us it's a godsend and a curse. It's instant money, but it leaves a digital trail like a bloodstain on a white carpet. The stress isn't just about the police, it's the infighting. The groups I'm in are filled with lotters, scammers who scam other scammers. You buy a kit of cloned cards, and half the time the bins are dead before you even download the file. You're constantly being hunted by the bank's AI, which can detect a non-standard transaction in milliseconds. My job is to be the standard. I have to shop, act, and click exactly like the person I just robbed. It's a psychological masquerade played out in binary. By 5 a.m., my heart is palpitating from the caffeine and the constant approved, declined roulette. If it's approved, I breathe for another day. If it's declined too many times, it's time to burn the hardware, toss the SIM cards, and disappear into the humid São Paulo fog.
Nobody goes to college to become a 7. There's no Intro to Larceny 101. You're recruited in the digital gutters, telegram channels with names like Echo 7 or King of Bins. But before you start making real money, you have to survive the noob phase. And in Brazil, the failure rate is about 95%. Most kids get excited, try to buy a $5,000 MacBook with a freshly cloned card on their own home Wi-Fi, and find themselves in handcuffs before the order confirmed email even hits their inbox. The training is a brutal lesson in operational security, or OPSEC. Rule number 1, never use your own iron. Your laptop is a burner. Your OS is running off a live USB with Tails or a heavily modified Linux distro. You learn to live behind layers of SOC 5 proxies and VPNs that bounce your signal from Tirana to Tokyo before it hits the Brazilian banking servers. If you can't explain the difference between a full info and a consultable, you're just bait. In the beginning, you're a tester. Your job is to take a list of 1,000 card numbers and run them through a checker, a script that attempts a 1-cent donation to a random charity to see if the card is active. It's tedious, it's loud. The script makes a ding sound for every live card. You sit there for 18 hours a day, listening for dings, earning a 5% commission while the big fish at the top of the pyramid get rich. Then comes the hardware phase. You have to learn how to use an MSR, a magnetic stripe reader and writer. Even though everything is chip and pin now, the fallback exploit is still a thing. You learn how to burn a card. You get a blank white PVC card. You encode the track 1 and track 2 data onto the stripe, and you pray the cashier at the grocery store is too tired to notice you're paying with a piece of plastic that looks like it came out of a cereal box. But the real academy is social engineering. In Brazil, we call it Lábia. You have to learn how to call a victim, pretending to be a security officer from Banco do Brasil, and sound so professional, so bored, and so helpful that the victim literally begs you to take their 2FA token. You learn the script, you learn the tone of voice, that specific, clinical call center accent that projects authority. You practice on low-value targets until you can lie without your pulse rising by a single beat. The final exam is your first big hit. You're given a consultable account with a $10,000 limit. You have to drain it without triggering the anti-fraud alarm. It's like surgery. You start small, a food delivery, a mobile recharge, then you escalate. You're checking the bin history, seeing where this person usually shops. If they live in Leblon, you don't buy a chainsaw in a rural town in Mato Grosso. You stay in their lane. If you pass, you get invited into the private groups. You get access to the direct bins, cards straight from the source, hacked from a major retailer's database. If you fail, you're burned. The groups block you, and you're left alone with a useless laptop and the very real possibility that the Federal has your MAC address.
This is it, the big mission. We call it the approval. We've been warming up this specific full info for 3 days. It's a high-tier corporate card belonging to an executive in Curitiba. The limit? Probably higher than the GDP of a small island nation. My partner, a shopper on the ground, is standing inside a high-end electronics store in a mall in Porto Alegre. He's wearing a crisp shirt, expensive-looking shoes, and has a fake ID that would pass a forensic exam. I'm in his ear via an encrypted voice app. My hands are shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer amount of taurine in my system. On my screen, I have the bank's security panel open, or rather a mirrored version of what the victim sees. I've already diverted the victim's SMS notifications using a SIM swap I paid a corrupt telecom employee to do 2 hours ago. Every alert the bank sends goes to my burner phone, not theirs. Go for the iPhones, I whisper. 2 Pro Maxes. Don't look at the price. Act like you're in a hurry. I see the transaction request pop up on my monitor. The bank's AI is sweating. It's analyzing the location, the amount, the SIM swap flag. This is the code black moment. The screen stays white for an eternity. My shopper is standing at the counter, the cashier is holding the card, and the declined or approved message is currently being decided by an algorithm in a server farm. Suddenly, my burner phone vibrates. It's the bank. They're calling to verify the transaction. I hit the voice changer. I've practiced the executive's voice for hours based on a LinkedIn video I found. Yes, this is him, I say, sounding annoyed like a man whose time is worth $1,000 a minute. I'm buying gifts for my staff. Is there a problem? Your service has been terrible lately. The agent on the other end apologizes. They're terrified of losing a high net worth client. Everything is fine, sir. The transaction is authorized. On my screen, the white window turns green. Approved. My shopper grabs the bags and walks out. He doesn't run. If you run, you're a thief. If you walk, you're a customer. But we aren't done. The clock is ticking. The SIM swap will be discovered the moment the executive tries to make a call. We have exactly 15 minutes to bleed the card dry. We hit another store, then another. We're buying things that are easy to liquidate: electronics, perfumes, designer watches. In the 7 world, an iPhone is just a more stable form of currency. By the time we're done, we've moved $25,000 worth of merchandise. Then comes the exit. My shopper drops the bags at a drop point, a locker in a bus station. A mule will pick them up and take them to a fence who pays us 40% of the retail value in Bitcoin. The adrenaline starts to crash. I'm back in my dark room. The sun is starting to peek through the blinds, hitting the dust motes dancing over my keyboard. I check the news. Nothing yet. I check the Telegram groups. People are bragging about their hits. I feel like a ghost. I've just moved more money in 30 minutes than my father made in 5 years, and I'm still sitting in a chair that smells like sweat and spilled soda. My phone pings. A message from the Laranja coordinator. The account is blocked. The Federal is looking at the PIX chain. My stomach drops. This is the reality. You're never safe. You're just not caught yet. I start the sanitization protocol. I wipe the drives. I smash the SIM cards with a pair of pliers and drop the pieces into a bottle of acid. I look at my reflection in the dark monitor. My eyes are sunken. My skin is the color of old parchment, and my heart is beating a rhythm that would make a drummer quit. I'm 24 years old, and I feel like I'm 80. This is the 7 life in Brazil. It's not a career. It's a slow-motion suicide with a really nice paycheck. I close my eyes for a second, but I can still see the green approved flashing behind my eyelids. Tomorrow, we do it all over again. Or tomorrow, the door comes down. Either way, I need more coffee.